We had a real good session last time. So when you fill out the evaluation, vote up, vote often, and I appreciate that. I remind you all, I'm Bob Stevens. I have worked with the State Department of Ed, with Charleston County, and I do a lot of professional development across the state. And I also work with the Medical University of South Carolina and the Department of Mental Health, as well as a few other groups. So I'm a guy that's retired and continues to like to work. So meeting with you all is the best part of my day. So I really appreciate being here. All right. And with me today, we have Taylor Davis, and I'm going to let her introduce herself. But I have known Taylor for, gosh, about 10 years now. And she works at the University of South Carolina in the Behavioral Health Academy. And she is one of the most fantastic experts that I know. And she's going to come on at the very end, but I just wanted to let her say hello to everybody now so so you will stay for the whole meeting because you have her to look forward to at the end. So, Taylor, introduce yourself, please.
Good morning, everyone. I don't know. I hope that I can live up to Bob's excitement and that really kind introduction. My name is Taylor Davis. As Bob said, I work at the University of South Carolina in the School Behavioral Health Lab. I've been on this team and led multiple projects over the past probably 5.5 years. And currently, I am the Associate Program Manager for the School Behavioral Health Academy. And I am a licensed practitioner here in Columbia and practicing in the evening, serving families and communities and individuals. So mental health, school behavioral health, prevention, that is very much at the core of my being, including suicide prevention. And as you guys will hear today, really talking about how we can be really efficient and really sustainable in our practices, leveraging technology like artificial intelligence. So Bob, I'll toss it back over to you and I'll turn my camera off and I will pop back up here towards the end, but I will certainly be engaged on my side.
All right. Thank you, Taylor. Yeah, great discussion. You're going to hear from me and get all the lecture stuff. But Taylor, at the very end, is going to be really talking about the future of how MTSS and data is going to work. And so we're really having an attempt here to give you a look at what's going to happen in the years to come, which is frightening in some ways, but also very, very exciting in other ways. So, talking specifically about AI and artificial intelligence and how that's going to help you in your work going forward, particularly around data problem solving. So, looking forward to that towards the end of the session today. All right. As we know, it's always do as I say, not as I do, but I do try to remind everybody anytime you're teaching or having a session that you have the expectations and people know exactly what to expect. So we are being responsible, we're being respectful, and we're being kind by laughing at all of my jokes. Okay. All right. Remember that from last time. Fantastic. I'm going to spend a little bit of time today connecting what we're talking about today with what we did at the last session. Remember, the last session was all about classroom management, and I think it went very well, and how that fit in the system of the school. And we talked about a variety of different things. I'm going to start out connecting this to the classroom management session we did last time. And then we're going to come forward and really talk about the teams. And there are a lot of different teams in the schools that you have that deal with data, that try to come up with solutions and interventions for our kiddos. And so we're going to start talking about in part one. Part two, we're going to continue that, and we're really going to get down into precision statements and how we use data and the five-step process and so forth, and hypothesis writing. And then the last part, it says 40 minutes. I don't know that it'll last that long. It might, depending on discussion. We're going to get into Taylor's session and talk a little bit about all the things that we talked about and how AI is going to help us do those things in the future. So it's really, again, our goal here is to really give you the information that you need as these things start coming down in the future. Really excited about that. All right, so those are our objectives for today. We're going to have three parts. We'll give breaks like we did last time. Give 10-minute breaks to get a snack or make a restroom visit, whatever you need. So we will do that. And I like it when people speak up. By all means, ask a question. Um, Shanice will monitor the. I get talking, so I don't always monitor the chat. Shanice will do that, and she'll interrupt me if you type something in the chat. But don't be shy about speaking up either. Happy to have the interaction, and I think interaction is much better. So I really like to have a conversation. So don't hesitate to jump in and ask a question. And then, as Shanice said, we'll have quick Q&A at the end as well. All right, we're going to try to get you all out of here before 12 o'clock, but the session is scheduled to go actually to a little bit after 12 with Q&A. We'll see how we move through all the slides. We have a lot of them, but we're going to move through them. So this is what we're doing today. These are our objectives. All right, here's what I want you to think about. Starting out where we talked about last time, and everything we're going to talk about today deals with your team because we're data problem solving with the team. We're actually going to start with the teacher data problem solving in the classroom, and that's how we're going to connect it back to classroom management. But I want you to think about what student intervention teams exist in your school. There might be an MTSS team. There might be an SST team or an SSI team. You might have grade level teams that do problem solving. That's all okay. What is the process that works in your school? So think about the teams that are in your school. May have multiple teams. You may have a grade level team that then, if they can't come up with a solution, it goes to the MTSS team. It gets kicked to the next team. So think about that. Then what I want you to think. So let's just stop right there. What teams do we have exist in your school? And go ahead and either type in some chat, give me some examples of what we have. I know we're all supposed to have MTSS teams, but in some schools, I also know that they're not very functional. So what teams do you know about having in your school? What do we got? Anybody put something in chat for us there, Shanice?
I am checking the chat, and I will let our attendees know that the chat feature and the Q&A are available to you for your participation, and we do encourage participation, whether you raise your hand and come off mute, but please engage with our presenter today. And so I'm looking in the chat. I don't see anything yet, Dr. Bob.
Nobody has any teams. Okay, well,
no one has teams.
So I'm seeing on my end, we've got it might just be that I've got a special view here, but I see we've got some folks saying they've got MTSS leadership teams, grade level teams, they've got specific subject teams.
Oh, subject teams. There you go.
Grade level teams. And then each school in our district has an MTSS team. So they've got the teams at the building level and then probably at the district level as well.
Fantastic. Thank you, Taylor. Appreciate you jumping in. Sorry to interrupt your other work. Interesting that they said, I'm going to take a second here. Interesting that they said subject matter teams, because we know that the State Department of Ed is really, when we talk about MTSS, they've emphasized the academic side. And we had this conversation at the last session, and that's great. Yeah, we're all here for learning, so we understand that we're all here for academic achievement. But we have to remember that when we talk about MTSS, and we're going to repeat a slide I showed you last time, that MTSS is much more than just academics in the way we're defining it. We understand the State Department of Ed is focusing on that, but there are these other components, which is really what we're talking about here, the behavioral health part. So interesting. All the teams that were mentioned are the kinds of teams that I expected. What I need you to think about in your school is, are they effective? Which ones are the ones that really get the work done? That's the next question here. And that's really what we find. The are we effective question is important, but it's in your school or in your district, which teams seem to be the ones that get the job done? And think about that, because it's going to be different from district to district, simply because of the way things are set up and what's emphasized by people in the influential positions. And that's going to be critical. All right. The one that I'm really interested in is question 3 there. And what data do your teams regularly look at? And that's the important one. And we're going to want to think about that. So thinking about your teams, we know that we tend to emphasize academic, and that'll be in there. But what can everybody type in a little bit? What are some of the data kinds of data that you look at? What are you looking at a power school? Do you have another data system that's collecting data like oh, I'm trying to think the one that's used quite often. Um, Educator's Handbook or one of the some of the ones that are used for special education. Uh, what data do you look at? What do you see? You're just getting your stuff out of Power School, out of the discipline module. Are we looking at anything that maybe the nurses have? The nurses sometimes have their own data systems that are looking at information. So you have data coming from all the different sources. What data do your teams regularly look at? So think about that. And I'm sure we're getting some things put in there. That's great. Okay. And then the next two that we're going to talk about. So we got some in there. All right. All right. I'm going to assume that we do. All right. Go ahead.
Yep, we sure do. We have, Tony says they are trying hard to get SEL screener in their county, and I'm not sure which school district. You can put that in the chat as well. Candace Parnell says teacher staff observations, office referrals, data management systems through Enrich and EdPlan, and parent concerns, Power School, Educator's Handbook, and Panorama.
All right. Fantastic. I really like the screeners. We know that and we're not going to talk about this. It'll be at a future session that we do. The issue of screeners has become more and more important. It's an issue that is rife with controversy in some districts. But that's an important kind of data, and we'll be talking about that in future session. Those other ones are great. Boy, you really hit all the big categories. Think out of the box a little bit. Like I mentioned, the nursing. Sometimes there's data sitting in places that we don't think about. And of course, you have your high stakes testing data as well. That's sometimes overused. But think about where you get your data. And fantastic, great ones. Next part of this is, okay, we've had our data and we've created some interventions, and then are they implemented? If you remember back in our last session, kids, our solutions or our interventions for kids don't work for one of two reasons. The first reason is we picked the wrong solution, we picked the wrong intervention for the child, be it academic or behavior. We picked the wrong intervention, and that's because we didn't look at the data. The second part of it is the other reason they fail is because we didn't implement it with fidelity. We didn't implement it properly. And so one of the things we have to be concerned about in looking at the data, we look at the data to select the right intervention, but then do we implement it with fidelity? We implement it properly. Because if the intervention doesn't work with a kiddo, there's only two reasons. It's the wrong intervention or we didn't implement it properly. Those are the only two reasons it would fail. So we have to remember that, and we have to think about the implementation, and that's where we get into the next part, progress monitoring, because we have to keep checking ourselves. We're going to talk a little bit about it today, but one of the tier 2 interventions I think we mentioned last time was check in, check out. And all tier 2 interventions are supposed to be modified as they go along, just like applied behavioral analysis should be. And I go to schools and I see a child that has been put on a check-in, check-out intervention, and it is exactly the same at the end of the year that it was at the beginning of the year. And that's completely insane. First of all, it should have faded if it was successful. If we were progress monitoring and it was making a difference, it should have faded sometime during the year. But it also should be adjusted depending on the kind of data we're getting back, how we progress monitor. So this idea of checking implementation is really a critical issue. Talked too long on this slide, so I'm going to go forward, but this is important setup for us. Okay, so real quickly, think about all these different problem-solving teams that you put down. Think about who's on them. Teachers, administrators, counselors. Do we have the right people on them? We could include the SRO in some cases on here. Other kind of folks. Think about the folks Do you have the right people on the teams? Some cases, like perhaps a grade level team, it's going to be primarily teachers, perhaps with an administrator, maybe the counselor sits in. But think about who's on the different teams and who we need to have them, who needs to be on these teams, because we want as broad a broad as participation as we can, or as appropriate. This slide, it's in the Padlet again. I gave this to you last time, and I can't tell you how important I feel this is, particularly as you're getting ready for next school year. We need to, and I started today's session, we need to know what teams are in your schools. What are they doing? And we need to work smarter. And one of the things that I asked you to do last time, the handout has instructions that tell you how to use this matrix, but it's really sit down and say, what teams do we have in the school? Who's on the team? When does the team meet? What is the goal of the team? Who's this team supposed to help? Is it helping teachers, students, parents, families? And then how important is this to the mission of the school and the principal's priority? Because we all know what the principal's priorities are. That's what gets the attention. So, or the super for a district team, the superintendent's priorities. That's what gets the attention. So it's really important that you think about these teams, because what we find when we do this is that the 80-20 rule, as we mentioned last time, 80% of these teams are manned by 20% of the people. The teams meet at the same time. They don't know who they're supposed to be serving, who's on the team, who's not on the team. And this Working Smarter document will allow you to go through, combine teams, eliminate teams, add teams. And it's really important that your school and your district do this in a real direct and thoughtful way, so we have the right teams. Because if we don't have the right teams, everything I'm gonna say from here on in isn't gonna matter, because the teams can't function properly and they don't have any influence anyway. So we have to start out with what teams do we got, and let's have the ones we need, because we have a lot of schools that have more teams than they need. We're wasting a lot of time, and then that means everybody doesn't like or go along with, and they all dismiss what comes out of the different school teams. And we don't want that to happen. So this is where we start. I shared this with you last time, and I just can't tell you how important it is to do this with the principal and with the school leadership to make sure that we have the right teams. All right, beating this horse enough, so let me move on. All right, and again, last time we talked about what interventions are at your school. I want you to think about that, what interventions you have, and then put them on the triangle. We all understand we're on the triangle. We talked a little bit about how unfortunately, where we used to be in silos and everybody was in their own silo. Now everybody talks about, the public health triangle, and we're all on our own triangles and we don't necessarily communicate. We all think we're communicating because we're all saying tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, but unfortunately, all the different groups in the school are on their own triangle. It's just silos by another name. So remember that as you talk, and that's why who's on these teams and making sure that folks from different disciplines on the teams is really critical. And then we all remember some of the sample interventions. Not going to spend a lot of time on this right now, and we'll get into deep dive onto tier 2 and tier 3 interventions at future, but we've talked a little bit about what some of the interventions are in the past. Okay, my big slide here, the Interconnected Systems Framework. We're in South Carolina, we really talk about MTSS, although ISF is not a bad term either, Interconnected Systems Framework. We know that we've gotten away from the PBIS team, which is the PBIS term, because it was so poorly implemented in South Carolina 20 years ago. And I say that as one of the people that was responsible for implementing it, that in some places PBIS is not viewed as a positive term. So we've really gone to this idea of the MTSS team. You can use ISF, remembering that what's important for us, and Taylor later on, that MTSS includes behavioral health and mental health. So we have the response to intervention side, RTI side, which is academics. We have the PBIS, which is the behavior side. And now we're including some higher level issues, including mental health issues and so forth. And you see we have grade level teams in here and SST or SIT teams, something called Team 2. I'm going to talk about that at a future meeting. Team 2 is interesting. This is where how you handle crises in the school. We'll talk a little bit about that from a behavioral standpoint as well as a mental health standpoint down the road. And it's something Taylor and I are going to work on because Team 2 is a critical component of how we respond in our schools. All right. Want to remind everybody about the MTSS because that's the term we tend to use in South Carolina, despite all the other acronyms that I just shared with you. And remember, it's really student focused. It's taking the focus off of the intervention itself and to the students using the public health triangle, prevention and instruction for all students, identifying what the student needs rather than saying what that need is, and saying the student needs this rather than we need to do this to the student. Okay? Got a couple more people in the lobby there. And then what are the programs that are available? Intentional design of the services. And that's really what we're going to talk about today, our intentional design. And then the futuring piece that Taylor does about AI is really going to be about intentional design because we'll have artificial intelligence to help us with our design. All right. So this is sort of refreshing our memory from what we talked about last time. If you remember last time, I did the presentation and we had the 10 basic classroom management practices that we talked about each one. And we gave lots of tools to help you make sure your teachers were doing these 10 classroom management practices in your school. We're not going to go over them now, but within this, we talked a lot about changing the behavior of the adult in the classroom, not the changing the behavior of the student. Or really what we said is by changing the behavior of the adults, we can change the behavior of the students. Our adults were doing things that created often sometimes problems in the classroom. We also talked about having to understand why the students were doing what they were doing, and then us taking the initiative to change what was in our classroom that was triggering the kid from a behavior standpoint. And we came down on, this is my favorite slide, I showed it to you last time, with the kids, it's all fun and games until somebody figures out the function of the behavior, the motivation. And so we talked a lot about to help teachers understand what they need to do differently with Johnny or Susie or whoever, that they really needed to think a little bit more deeply, not just about what the child did, but why they did it so they could change their behavior. So the child that was operating, as an example, out of attention-getting behavior, we wouldn't wait until 10 o'clock when the child blew up because they needed attention. The teacher would pre-correct, would intervene prior to 10 o'clock to prevent that from happening. But it called for the teacher to do something different and not just rely on consequences. And so we spent a lot of time talking about it. That's all I'm going to say now. You remember what set us up. And this is important because this is going to be an important part of the data problem solving. So having successful data problem solving team and looking at data is going to rely a little bit on the fact that we've done a good job training our teachers to think about motivation and to collect the data that we need to have. And all of that information. And again, in our last session, we talked about this is the data that our teachers need to have, that need to look at to make decisions within the classroom to change the behavior. Okay, so we know now when we start looking at our teamwork, one of the issues we have is we go to a team, everybody sits around, everybody, excuse my language, well, I won't say what I was going to say because I'm old and I'm salty, as I've told you, so I'll try to catch my language here. Everybody complains, I was going to use a different word, everybody complains about how ineffective our meetings are, and that's because what happens is we go into a meeting and we say, oh, the cafeteria is terrible, it's out of control, and yet what happens is then rather than trying to find out what a solution is by using data, everybody stands around and doesn't use data, and they talk about this and talk about that, and the conversation goes all over the place, and everybody talks about how Johnny did this and then how Billy did that, and we get to an hour and everybody's just moaned and groaned and complained and that other word that I didn't use. And there we go. So our meetings have been ineffective. So one of the things I want us to start thinking about and why data is important is because data will make our meetings effective. And so if we have a problem, we use data that we know that we can do it. There's a statement here that I want us to remember because we're going to refer to this in session 2, the second part of today's session. A collective problem solving is a key to collective problem solving is to provide a visual context that allows everyone to follow and contribute. And that's what I'm going to talk about. And then we get to the third one. AI really helps us with that process. It helps organize us and helps us to see what we're doing and what we're going to do. So remember this statement for later on. It helps us avoid that. And the visual context, we're going to use 2 examples coming up in the second part of the session, something called TIPS and something called PDSAs. So we're going to hear more about this visual context. Okay. Remember when we talked about with our teachers, we had to kind of train them. And again, I'm going to tell you one of the best professional developments you could organize for your school would be to get one of your special ed, get your LPC like Taylor or your mental health counselor or somebody who knows the information to be able to talk about function of behavior. If you could do a PD in every one of your schools for the teachers to help them understand the function of behavior or motivation, that would be time well spent before the next school year. Because that's what we want them to do. Remember, we want them to think about not just that he got into a fight, but what caused that fight to start. What in that child motivates him to respond to conflict in that way. Whether it's attention getting or avoidance of work or any of these other kinds of things. So think about that. I can help with this, but it's a critical one. And you have experts in your school and your districts that can do this training. Call on them and then make sure your schools and your districts use a common language around this idea of function of behavior. All right. So what we need to do now as we're looking at data and as we're meeting with the team is to come up with a hypothesis statement. Most of you have graduate degrees. At some point, you've talked about or written papers and you had to generate a hypothesis. I sit on a lot of PhD committees at the Medical University of South Carolina and also at the University of South Carolina. And every time I have a PhD student that I'm working with, we have to spend most of our time narrowing down the hypothesis. The graduate students are great. They want to come in and solve all the problems of the world, but it's not realistic. And so one of the things that we focus on is narrowing it down to getting very specific. And if you remember your days as a student, writing that paper, coming up with a hypothesis, what invariably happens to be successful is you get encouraged and you find you have to, because of the volume of the data, to narrow your hypothesis. And so one of the things we're trying to do is come up with a summary statement that describes a teacher's best guess about what the behavior is and what's going on in the classroom, still talking about teachers now, and we get to a specific function. So think about this. We're going to talk about hypotheses in more detail. We want to know concretely what's going on. Remember in our last session, we talked a little bit about when the teachers fill in that office referral slip, they have to be specific about what's going on. We can't use, all of the general terms. They were disruptive or they were disrespectful. That doesn't work. I want to know exactly what they did. He slammed his book down on the table. He did, or she did this. Because what happens, and we covered this last time too, when you use terms, generic terms or general terms like disrespectful, then we're able to apply these things unequally to different students. And this is where we get into situations where some classes of students are now have exclusionary discipline more than others. And we know, for example, African American males are suspended at a higher rate in South Carolina than other groups. And part of the reason is, part of the way we get around that is by saying we're not going to allow them to use these generic statements like disrespectful or disruptive. We have to know exactly what the student has done. And it makes a big difference. But it also helps us with our data problem solving. And so that's what we need to do. So in our last session, again, we talked about the teachers. They took this information. They make a plan to take care of Johnny, who's attention getting by, we're going to give him, remember the red folder idea? We're going to give him the red folder to give him some attention, to disrupt that function of behavior that he has. So we plan for that. We're teaching the class. Did having him go out with the red folder work? We analyze. Well, it didn't work too well this time, or it worked great. We're going to do it again. We reflect. And so we have a teaching and learning cycle that our teachers use using the data. And that's critical because now when we talk about school teams, got ahead of myself. I'm sorry. I'm going to jump past this actually because we're asking the teachers to come up with hypothesis. But now, rather than just the teacher doing it, because we're asking the teachers to do that in a simple way, we're taking that same process and we're going to ask the whole school team to do it. So we're going to have a team data-based decision-making process. So the cool thing about this is if we've taught our teachers well, they become great members to the school teams because they understand this process. They're using it in their classroom, and now they can apply it to the whole school. This would really get so exciting, and it makes our teachers such good teachers and such good team members. It's fantastic. This is what we're shooting for. This is what we're shooting for. So our team-based decision-making, we're using our student outcome data. You can see everything we say here. We're identifying the youth that need the support and need an appropriate intervention. We're getting that from our teachers. We're getting some information from them about motivation and function of behavior. We know that we're going to do ongoing progress monitoring. We're going to have some kind of way to, okay, we've accomplished what we want to accomplish here. And so now we're going to go on to the next thing. Because what's terrible is we see kids on interventions that never changes, they never improve, and yet they're on the same intervention. Now, when you go to the medical doctor, you hope you're going to be able to get off the medication sometime. Maybe sometimes you can if it's chronic illness, but we hope that we're going to be able to get better. And we want that to happen here as well. And then the intervention is being done with fidelity because if we don't, remember, we have to have the right intervention, and then it has to be implemented with fidelity. If it's not, it won't work. If either one of those things isn't there, it's not going to work. And all this goes into the decision making. Again, one of my favorite slides. We'll just let you look at it and understand it and know that it's true. Because boy, we keep talking about Johnny. Beginning of the year, we were talking about Johnny. And at the end of the year, guess what? We're still talking about Johnny. We're still talking about the same problems. And that's because we haven't done a good job with the problem solving. Okay. Remember the cycle that we had that the teacher, I'm going to go back to it real quick, that the teacher needed to do? Continuous improvement cycle? Well, if the teacher's doing it, that's also what the whole school needs to do. And we all understand the idea of continuous improvement, TQM, total quality management. It's how teams operate and how schools work. We see this coming from all different, you see this on the academic side, you see it on the behavior side, but the idea that we analyze the situation, we look at the data, we define what we're going to do, we select and implement some evidence-based interventions, and again, academic and behavioral both. We help our teachers, step forward is help our teachers do this within the classroom, whatever needs to be done. We assess and evaluate if we implement it with fidelity. Is it working? Has it done? We get to step 6 and 7. Have we gotten all the resources we need? And then we go back and we see, okay, did it make a difference? How do we need to adjust it? But this idea of continual process improvement, that's what data problem solving is all about. And so that's where we are. All right. moving on because I want to get done with session one here pretty quickly. There are 6 steps that you need to think about to using your data effectively in your school. 6 steps. Number 1, let's talk about data all the time in our school. You all know what SMART goals are. I'm not going to go through that. You've all had SMART goals to death, I know. But SMART goals do push you to use data. And so if you build a foundation in your school, every time that the leadership talks, we're talking about looking at the data. That's a critical thing for you to do within your schools and within your districts. Is just make sure people understand we're not going to go on assumptions. We're going to go on the data that we have, and we're going to get as much data as we can from all the different sources that we talked about, and we're going to use it. So step 1 is build a foundation of using data. Step 2, continuous improvement. We're South Carolina, and I said this at the last meeting, and it's absolutely true. We're great at admiring our data. We have data walls. We get there and look at it and say, oh, this is fantastic, but we don't do a great job of problem solving with our data. And so we need to understand that we want to have our teachers and everyone else think about data in a different way. To think about data, I look at this data, what can I do differently to improve this data, to get the test score higher, to get fewer kids referred to the office? What can I do to make sure that I get improvement by using the data? Not just admire it, but problem solve with it that causes improvement in my school. Invest in a data management system. Okay, there's all different kinds of data management systems. The AI discussion we're going to have is going to help with that in the future at some point. But there are data management systems. I happen to be something called a Swiss Trainer, which is a great data system, comes out of PBIS. We mentioned Educator's Handbook. We have PowerSchool. We have all Enrich. We have all these other data sources. And how can we use them? And one of the problems with the data systems is they don't help us. I have some very simple Excel systems that I can share with you and happy to do. In fact, I think one of them may be in the Padlet, but there's some other ones as well. But when we have the teams sitting down to do data problem solving, we have to have the data in front of us. So we have to have some kind of data system that you can pull this data up quickly. Because what happens in our teams, they say, well, we think we have this problem. We'll go back and we'll report back next meeting because we got to go look up this data someplace or the other. You can't operate a team that way. You have to have the data at your fingertips. So to do that, you have to have a data management system of some kind. So think about that, because think about team meetings you go to, and I'm giving you a really strong hint here, folks. If you sit in a team meeting and you can't get the data, or it takes time to get it, or we can't get it until the next meeting, or we can't get that data, we don't have that data, you need to bring up the question, we need to invest somehow into some kind of data management system so we can sit here in the meeting and look at the data that we need. Okay? Otherwise, if you're sitting in these meetings and there's no data to look at, or the data is all anecdotal, it's not going to help you much. Not going to help you much. Okay. Have any question? I'm rolling here. I apologize. I get going. And so I apologize. So jump in if anybody's got a question, please. Please, please. All right. Number 4, select the right data. Create a system with a mix of data. Don't just look at the same data you always look at. What other data can we get our hands on? What other data is available? Screening data, office referral data, data that the nurse has, data that the school, the counselor has, data that the SRO has. Who has the data? Data that some of our grade level teams have, but they haven't shared with the MTSS team. What kind of information do we need? There might be data from the cafeteria that we have kids that aren't able to get their lunches that we don't know that could be impacting lots of things because kids aren't eating. They're not getting their lunch. And so then we wonder why they're not doing so well academically after lunch. There's all kinds of data that is available in the school that we don't think about, we don't use. So create a system with a mix of data, and it deals with everything that you can. The buses. Oh my gosh, data from the buses is critical because that sets the stage for the school day. All right, school capacity for data-driven. Invest in the professional development around assessment and data. Have somebody come to the school and talk specifically about how to access data, how to look at data, how to analyze it in a different way. Send a staff member in your school to some data problem-solving workshops. Provide systematic training for how teachers should collaborate. It's what we're going to go into part 2 of this. How do we go about doing this? Provide this training to our teams. Connect educators across the schools in your district. Where are they doing this well? Where are they not? Where is a district in the state that's doing this? We'll be talking about that. We'll be talking about that a little bit. Big one important here is make sure that we make sure our staff and our teachers aren't afraid of data. Data is a 4-letter word, but it doesn't have to be a 4-letter word. So yes, we're going to use it. On one hand, we're going to be saying use data, use data, use data, but data sometimes scares people. So we have to provide the training on how to use it, make sure they understand data is not a 4-letter word. It's something we all can learn to love. Love is also a 4-letter word. Okay. And then step number 6, how do we then analyze and act on the data? And we're going to talk obviously about that. How do we do the protocols to use the data in making decisions and creating interventions? And we're going to talk specifically about that in part 2. All right. One of the things I do want to spend a little bit of time on, we're going to end in this, and I'm going to go through this very quickly, that when we have a team, when we have a data team, be it a grade level team or an MTSS team or a SIT team, whatever it is, we have to have our roles defined. Do you remember that slide earlier that had the lines going all over the place? One of the reasons that happens is because the roles aren't defined. And they're core roles for any effective meeting in a school. There needs to be a facilitator of the meeting. There needs to be a minute taker, somebody that's taking the minutes, saying this is what we're doing, making sure that we have the agenda and making sure we get through it. Then we have to have a data analyst. This is the person that we're sitting on the team and we say, we need data. What does the data say here? Tell me when we have that data. And this is the person that we've invested in the data system. They can get their hands on the data and provide that data in the meeting. So somebody is called a data analyst. So find that person in your school that loves data. Make them the data analyst on the teams. Every school's got people that love data. I'm one of those guys. I love looking at the data. Find the right person to take that role. But you have to have a data analyst, otherwise nothing else will happen. Team members need to be active. They can't sit on their hands. And then you should have an administrator, because you might be making decisions that you have to get input from the administration. Now, I'm going to tell you very clearly, I don't like the administrator to be the facilitator. We also have to talk to our administrators a little bit. Those of you that are administrators, if you're in a team meeting, quite often, particularly if you're the principal, everybody's talking and they want to make a decision, but before anybody makes a decision, guess what they all do? They all look down to the administrator, and it stifles the conversation. So administrators, when you're on these teams, make sure that you understand and the team understands you want free flow of instruction. They shouldn't look to you for approval before they make a decision. Now, having said that, if they come up with a solution that can't be done in your school, you need to tell them that, and so they don't waste their time. That's why you're there. They come up with pie in the sky. We're going to have every Friday off. Well, you know that you can't give every Friday off. You need to tell them that and stop that as a solution and say, that one's not going to work. You need to come up with look at the data and see if there's another solution we come up with. So the administrator being there is important, but make sure that you don't end up stifling and stopping the conversations that need to take place. So as an administrator, you need to learn that role. And then there should be a backup for every position, because you know what? The data analyst is going to be sick for that biweekly meeting, and then you're going to sit there, oh, we don't have any data, we can't do anything. So you have to have a backup for each of these positions. The facilitator got called away. I need to make sure the meeting starts at the right time, ends at the right time, all of those kinds of things. And again, typically not the administrator, as I said, for those other roles. Okay, so here's some of the things that they have to do. The facilitator, before the meeting, get the agenda, provide items to the minute taker. During the meeting, make sure you start on time, manage the flow. Don't get off on these wild goose chases, going down the rabbit holes. Prompts the team members with problem-solving mantra. We'll talk about, I have a mantra at the very end of this. As an active participant in the meeting and determines date, times, and locations for the next meeting. Facilitator should ask questions. Group norms, just like I started this out. What are the norms for the meeting? Keep the meeting on track. All right, the minute taker. I'm not going to go too much details, but here you see this is great slides. Your team should have these people. If you make sure your school teams have these people and they follow their roles, I can't tell you how much more effective your team meetings will be, no matter what team it is. And these can be applied to every team in the school. Okay? I love, when it comes to data, I love having the LCD projector that you can put the data on the screen. You remember that slide earlier? You want a visual way to see it? I love being able to put the data right up there. And that's why you have to be able to get your hands on the data that you need for the meeting. Okay? So that's the minute taker. And make sure that the meetings get disseminated. Critical. Sometimes you have a meeting and then nobody ever knows whatever happened at the meeting. Make sure that information gets sent out to everybody appropriate. And then, of course, the data analyst. Critical position. Okay. I'm moving along here. All right. This is the payoff here. This is the payoff. We want to move from general hypothesis, broad hypothesis, to something which is what we call a primary statement, to a precision problem statement. And to do that, we go back to what we learned from our classroom management one. We have to ask our teachers who, what, where, when, and why. That's the information we need to have at these meetings. So we're always asking to go from a primary statement to a general statement. You go into these meetings and somebody will say, the cafeteria is out of control. Well, what does that mean? Kids are throwing food. Kids are, the girls are fighting with the boys. I don't know what it is, but we need more information than the cafeteria is out of control. And to get it precise, you ask who, what, where, when, and why. So as an example, and then that helps us get to SMART goals. So as an example, here's a primary statement you might see in a school. There were too many office referrals. Maybe the school administrator says that. Man, we've had more suspensions this month than last month. We got gangs at this school. It's terrible. Cafeteria is out of control. Oh, the students here don't have any respect. A precision statement is there are more ODRs, office discipline referral, that's being sent to the office. There are more ODRs for aggression on the playground than there were last year. These are occurring during first recess with a large number of students, and the aggression is related to getting access to the new playground equipment. Now, if you say that rather than we're having a lot of fights on the playground, you can do something now. You can do something with that precision statement. Wait a minute, we got too many kids at first recess. Maybe some of those kids should be scheduled at second recess so the playground's not so crowded. Wait a minute, they're having fights because we only have 2 balls out there. Maybe we should buy 3 or 4 new balls so they can play together. Okay, so we can address the problem by using precision statements. This right here is the critical component to data problem solving, where we can make solutions that are meaningful. But we have to have that data to make the who, what, where, when, and why to make a precision statement. So let's look at another one. Let's see if we can find another one here. Let's see if we can have another one. I'm going to give you all a quiz now. Everybody, I'm going to have you look in. So, Shanice, I'm going to have you look in the thing. Okay. Gang-like behavior is increasing. Our fourth graders, and I'm going to use academic ones here, our fourth graders cannot comprehend when reading. Those are primary statements. We don't know enough information. Bullying, verbal and physical aggression on the playground is increasing during first recess, is being done mostly by 4 fourth grade boys and seems to be maintained by social praise from the bystander group. Now I have a precision statement I can come up with a solution for, or two. Our fourth graders cannot comprehend when reading. 47% of fourth grader students did not meet reading comprehension targets on Ames Web. It appears weak vocabulary skills are lowering students' comprehension skills. We can do something about that now. We can change our instructional model to address that with fourth grade students. And we know what to do. We don't change it for everybody. We change it with the fourth grade students. That's where it's needed. We don't have to worry about all the kids. We don't have to have no playground, but we know we have to deal with these 4 fourth grade boys that seem to be creating the problem on the playground. What are we going to do? We're going to pre-correct them. How are we going to make sure they don't get reinforced by the bystander group? So we can address the issues. And so this is the who, what, where, when, and why. Okay, so here's another one. And we can use it for an individual. The same problem-solving technique. Carly's not reading well. She's reading 20 words a minute. Goal is 60. She skips or guesses at words she doesn't know, mostly during language arts. So now we can address that during language arts. Carly cannot decode. She struggles to read the words containing R-controlled vowels with diphthongs and long vowels. Or digraphs, I'm sorry, not diphthongs. Jack cannot add or subtract. And now we get some very specific things that we can do to address. My point here to show the academic ones is that the problem-solving process is the same for everything. Here's one right here. Minor disrespect and disruption are increasing over time and most likely during the last 15 minutes of our block periods when students are engaged in independent seat work. Pattern is most common in 7th, 8th grades and many students that are trying to escape from work. I got an easy solution here. Do the seat work at the beginning of the block period, or maybe our block periods are too long and the kids can't sit there. There's all kinds of ways now we can address a problem because we understand what's going on by having the data, who, what, where, when, and why. And this is how you come up with a solution. All right, that is a precise statement. We know who, what, where, when, and why. Okay, so now I'm going to ask you to tell me whether this is primary or precise. Everybody take a look at it, and I'm going to let you tell me, and Shanice is going to look at the thing, and you tell me whether it's primary or precise. Remember, to be precise, it's got to have who, what, where, when, and why. What are the folks thinking there, Shanice?
I think people are still reading.
All right, they're
Elizabeth
still
Crocker
reading.
says
Okay.
it is.
I've been talking so much they've all turned off their microphones. Probably. I apologize.
No, they can come off. They can unmute themselves, but you're getting some responses now, and the consensus so far is that this is a precise statement.
There you go. Fantastic. And it is. Yay. All right, looking at the next one. Boys in 3rd grade are performing well below the 3rd grade girls in reading. Precise or primary?
The consensus so far is primary.
There you go. Yay. All right, we got a good class here, Denise. All right. 3 5th grade students are having great difficulty. Fine motor skill. And I'm purposely doing academic ones here because I want to show you that how it can relate. We'll do a couple of behavior ones in a minute. And as you would expect, everybody guessing, this one's pretty precise. I don't want to take too much time here on it, but I wanted to give you a chance. All right, got a couple more here. Children are using inappropriate language with high frequency in the presence of both adults and other children. This is creating a disrespect of incivility in the school. Well, you know what? That sounds precise, but it really
Yeah.
isn't. It's
Oh,
not.
you are getting several precise in the chat. A few
Yeah,
people have said primary.
it is primary because what children? That really doesn't tell us much. James D., the individual student, is hitting others in the cafeteria during lunch. His hitting is maintained by peer attention. That's precise. Who is it? James D. Where is it? Cafeteria during lunch. When is it? Well, cafeteria is where it is. When is it? During lunch. What is he doing? He's hitting. And why is he doing it? Because he's getting attention for doing it. So that one was definitely. And again, real quick, ODRs during December are higher than any other month. That's a primary statement. The second one, minor disrespect. Again, who, what, where, when, and why. Looks pretty precise to me. Okay, everybody with me? Oh, I got more here. Three fifth grade boys are name calling and touching girls inappropriately during recess, an apparent attempt to obtain attention and possibly unsophisticated sexual expression. Boys are engaged in sexual harassment. Obviously, the top one is precise, and the second one is primary. So when we're making decisions, what is the problem? Who's involved? Are there many students or few? What kind of problem do we have? When and where and who are these and how are we going to address it? And don't forget the motivation piece. Whew, took longer than I thought. We're going to take our break, and you notice, by the way, we have the Southeastern School Behavioral Health Conference coming up on April 16th. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. I will see you all at 9:10, or excuse me, at 10:10. Come back at 10:10. Thank you all so much for listening to me drone.
Thank you, Dr. Stevens. We'll see you all back at 10 minutes after 10.
All right. While everybody's coming back in before Shanice officially starts us, on the screen right now is obviously says a break, but also it has information about the Southeastern School Behavioral Health Conference. I know many of you have attended that in the past. It's coming up here shortly in April. Once again, it's going to be in Myrtle Beach. Hope that some of you will make it this year. I know that this group was particularly interested in classroom management based on the last conversation I had with you all. So I asked the conference, Taylor and I are both involved with the conference, but I asked the conference leadership to tell me some of the sessions that dealt with classroom management. And so I thought I would do that. First of all, one of the keynotes, who's a nationally known guy, Dr. James Hughley, he's going to talk about lessons from the Discipline Project, the National Discipline Project they have. So that is one of the keynotes. But in addition to that, we have Karen Effner and from South Florida, and then also she's with Maya Kelly, who's from the University of North Carolina, and they're going to talk about evidence-based, relationship-focused classroom management strategies. That's evidence-based, relationship-focused strategies. Dr. Roush from the University of Iowa is going to be talking about how teachers with anger issues struggle with behavior in the classroom. So that's another one. Dr. Ort from the University of South Carolina, right here in South Carolina, he's going to be talking about a model in which he uses the RISE model, the Recognized Interpersonal Communication Supportive Environment, to help with behavior in the classroom and deal with mental health issues in the schools. And then one of the best ones is Dr. Greg Benner. Dr. Greg Benner's been around for a lot of years, and if you were to try to get him to come to your school, you couldn't afford him. And he's going to be talking about practical, emotional, and behavioral strategies in the classroom, and he's nationally known. So if you can make it to the conference, there's a lot of information you can get specifically on the classroom management. There's a lot of other things going on at the conference too, but I knew this group was particularly interested in that. So here's an opportunity in South Carolina to talk to some of the national leaders on this topic. So just giving my commercial here for you, and I'll stop there. Shanice.
All right, Dr. Stevens, thank you so much. Again, a reminder, this session is being recorded. That recording will be sent out and put in the Padlet once it is transcribed by our agency. That takes a little bit of time, but in the interim, you will have access to the slide deck in the Padlet at the conclusion of our training today. You'll also receive an evaluation. Again, I will encourage you, although we are recording this session, you can turn on your cameras, you can engage with our presenter using the microphone, the question and answer tab, as well as the chat. So please feel free to engage. And Dr. Bob, do you happen to have that registration link for the conference? If not, I can pull it in the background and drop it in the chat.
Right there, schoolbehavioralhealth.org. That takes them right to it. Schoolbehavioralhealth.org.
Okay.
Okay. All righty, fantastic. All right, so yay, we learned about precision problem statements. And that's great. Now we can define our problem. How do we solve the problem? How does our team come up with a solution? And this is the real guts of what we're talking about today. Once we know to do a precision problem statement based on who, what, where, when, and why, now we have to come up with a solution. And here's the first step to the solution. There are 5 things that we need to think about. Number 1, what can we do to prevent this thing from happening in the future? And this is the one that our teachers don't do enough and we don't do enough in school. What we think about a lot is the last one, consequences. We have to have consequences for bad behavior. I'm not saying we don't have to, but if all we ever do when we see a problem is say, this is the problem, Here's the consequence for the kids not doing what they're supposed to do. They get an F if they can't read. They fail the class, they can't read, they get to take it next year. Or they got in a fight on the playground, so we're going to suspend them for 2 days. And if they get in a fight next time on the playground, we're going to suspend them for another 2 days. That is something we understand we have to have consequences. But if that's all we do, then we're never going to change the problem. And the problem that our schools have gotten into is they go right to that last one rather than saying, okay, yes, Johnny has been suspended for 2 days for fighting on the playground. But what are we going to do different to prevent that from happening? Gee, there's not enough games on the playground for the kids to play to keep them from fighting. Or we got 200 people on the playground in a space that's designed for 50 people. So no wonder that there's friction occurs. So we can now think about what can we do to prevent it. We are all teachers. What do we need to teach to change the behavior? We forget this one so often, particularly around behavior. Around Johnny learning how to read, we say, okay, well, maybe we'll teach him differently. But around behavior, the second thing we do after what can we do to prevent it is, what do I need to teach him? I need to teach Johnny that it's not, that we have to share on the playground and we have to take turns with the ball. We don't fight about it. So we have a teaching opportunity. Let's maybe reward them if they do it right. If we have no fights on the playground today, we're going to get an extra 5 minutes of playground time. Yay! And we tell them that. That's your reward system. That's your acknowledgement. That's your recognition. Then we have to look at the function of the behavior. This is the motivation, and what can we do to address that? And that's the hardest one on here, but we do have to think about the function of behavior, and we have to understand what it is, and we have to try to intervene. If Johnny is doing something because he wants to get attention, we have to figure out a way for him to get attention in a better way. Okay? And then the consequences. Again, I want everyone to hear very clearly. I'm not saying don't have consequences. If Johnny gets in a fight and the rule says if you get in a fight, you're suspended for a day, you have to have the consequence. So we need to be consistent in our corrections. That's important to classroom management too. We talked about that last time. But if all we do in these problem-solving teams is to sit down and say, well, we're having a lot of fights. Let's get our student manual and remind everybody, get that out and remind everybody, if you have a fight, you're going to be suspended for 2 days. If that's your solution, then you're not going to solve the problem. We also have to look at prevention. What do we need to teach differently? How can we give recognition when they do it properly? What's the function of the behavior? What can we do to eliminate that problem behavior from being rewarded by attention or being successfully avoiding work or whatever it might be? And then, yes, there's a consequence when you misbehave or you don't learn the math. You do have to repeat the class, perhaps. But if that's all, yep. Okay, I'm sorry. Yay! Thank you. Yay! I got a statement. Thank you.
You got a comment. You actually have two very good comments in the chat, Dr. Bob.
Please read them out for me, please.
Sharon Davis says teachers need not be in a huddle, spread out more on the playground and be visible.
Yay!
And
yes.
then Tony says, and there is a big difference between consequence and punishment, which I love that statement.
Yeah, absolutely correct. Absolutely correct. I'm a proponent of the logical. There was a famous book written, 30 years ago now, called Logical Consequences. And sometimes our consequences aren't logical. You did something wrong in the classroom, so now something happens to you on Saturday. It's nuts. I remember I was a principal at a middle school, and I used to have Saturday school. rather than not come to school, rather than get the kids out of school, I would have the kids come on Saturday. I'd turn on the bells, and I had all the teachers. I had to do it myself, but had all the teachers, give me an assignment. And the kids actually, they're the only ones there all day, and they went around from class to class, and they had to do, and boy, I tell you what, coming to Saturday school, they only do that one time. But I wasn't preventing them from learning. I was enhancing the learning. But anyway, there's lots of things you can do with consequences. Absolutely. But we have to have consequences. One of the big raps that PBIS had was that, oh, they just want to give the kid prizes when they do it right, and they don't want to have any consequences. And that's absolutely not the case. We didn't train people in it very well. You have to have consequences, and you have to be consistent, but you also have to do all these other things. So thanks for that. All right. So then we're going to come up with an action plan. Who's going to do each task, and when will it be completed? And then this is the other part of that. What do we do when we do the action plan? How do we know that it worked? Did we implement it with fidelity? I've been beating this horse all day. 2 reasons why interventions don't work. The wrong intervention, that comes from data, and we didn't implement it properly. That's the adults in the building. Okay, so let's look at this. An example for precise problem statement. 6th and 7th graders are engaging in inappropriate language, harassment, and disrespect and aggression in 2 classrooms at 9:45 and 12:45 to get peer and adult attention to escape their work. There are 175 total instances of problem behavior in 6th and 7th grade classrooms. All right. Now, first of all, you may be in a school that has 6th, 7th, and 8th graders in it. Well, you don't have to deal. This isn't a problem for the 8th grade. That 8th grade teachers can go happily on their way, and they don't have to deal with this. So that's the other problem. We tend to often, and principals are bad about doing this. We have a problem in one grade with a few kids, and so, oh my goodness, we're now going to have silent lunch in the cafeteria because we got 10 kids that can't do it right. We apply these rules completely crazy sometimes. And so we have to think about that. So what are we going to do to prevent it from happening? Okay, we're going to review the 6th and 7th graders' classroom expectations on respecting others. We're going to do that every day in the 6th and 7th grade. We're going to focus on respect. We're going to reteach the stop and walk routine. That's a routine that this school has about respect, how you stop, and if somebody's disrespecting you, and rather than getting in a fight, you walk away. And we won't go into what precisely it is, but they have a routine here that they do to help to teach the kids how to behave properly. Set up daily double class period with problem behaviors, receives 2 extra minutes at end of period to talk, whatever it might be. Withhold reward, serve staff routine for responding. Corrective consequence, use the school-defined process. So we have a series of things that we can do. Here's another one, academic performance problem statement. 4 4th grade students are performing below expectation on reading comprehension. You can see what they are. The point is, you come up with, what are we going to do to prevent it from happening? What can we do to teach to correct it? What can we do to reward and reinforce the right behavior or the right learning? I went too far. And this one, it's academic. The corrective consequence is the grade, but you get the idea. All right. So moving forward, we're going to use the data to build our solution. Prevent, teach. What's the recognition we can do? What can we do to prevent the problem behavior from being rewarded, the extinction, and then the consequences? I've added one more line here just to remind us that we use data all the time to make sure that we've implemented with fidelity and making sure that the behavior is improving. Because if we go along and we find out it's not improving and nothing is changing, then we need to go back and say, are we doing the right intervention? And maybe we didn't implement it properly. So we have to look at the data. That progress monitoring we have to do. So I've included that as a box here at the end. I have actually taken this sheet right here and put it on the cover of, if you have a problem-solving team and they have a They have a notebook for the problem-solving team. I've actually taken this page and put it on the cover so everybody who's sitting in that meeting always remembers when somebody brings up a problem to say who, what, where, when, and why, so that it's made precision. And then what are we going to do to prevent? What are we going to do to reteach? What are we going to do to acknowledge or reward? What are we going to do to make it go away because of function? And then what is the corrective consequence? What is the consequence we have? And then also the monitoring, the progress monitoring. This one page right here is what this whole 3-hour session is all about. And I'm serious. I actually print this and put it on the cover so everybody sitting in that meeting knows to define the problem first and define the solution second. And so I can't make it any easier than this, folks. Here it is. It's all right here. Define the problem, make it precise, define the solution, and make sure you monitor for progress. That's it. That's this whole 3 hours right there. Okay, so you can use something like this, hypothesis. I've included several of these forms in the Padlet. You can go and look. Some of them are more sophisticated than what's on the screen, but they are there. And so what we're doing, we're improving decision making, the problem solving, using data, the solution, and then the action planning and evaluation at the end. Did it work? Okay. And so here's, again, identify the problem. What is it? Identify the goal. What do we want to change? And this is that team problem solving mantra that I mentioned earlier. This is that thing that you should actually look at. This would be the other one that could put on the back. If we're doing team problem solving, these are the things that we need to do. Identify the problem with precision, identify the goal, identify the solution, implement the solution with high fidelity, high integrity here. I use the term fidelity. Monitor impact of the solution. Got to go back and monitor it, and then go back and, okay, what do we need to do differently? What do we need to change? What worked? What didn't work? That's the mantra, and you can see the questions to ask at each stage. So, this page right here and that page right there, if you give those 2 pages to your teams, it'll make all the difference in the world once you've identified the teams. Use those 2 pages. All right. I'm now going to give you the 2 classic examples of how this is done. The National Center for School Mental Health, other mental health professionals all over, in using the process, in creating a process to do this, they use something called Plan, Do, Study, Act. Raise your hand or just say yes. How many people here have heard of PDSAs or Plan, Do, Study, Act cycles? Dina, tell me how many people say they've heard of those.
You got a few thumbs up. And then in the chat earlier, someone said that they do use the PDSA.
All right, fantastic. The other one comes out of PBIS and it's called TIPS, TIPS, Team Implemented Problem Solving. And I'm going to show you these 2. These are the 2 planning processes that are most used in schools. I don't care which one you use, and you're going to see why in a minute. I don't even care if you come up with your own. But some of the things that are in these, you have to have in your process. So I'm going to show you PDSAs. So now you're going to know what a PDSA is. I'm going to show you a TIPS program. So now you're going to know what TIPS is. The idea is these are the things your teams need to be doing. Okay. So PDSAs, Plan, Do, Study, Act cycles, are small repeated tests that schools and school districts can pilot during quality improvement process. TIPS is team-initiated problem solving as a model for supporting school MTSS teams and making database decision making. So they're both similar kinds of things. Here's a graphic that shows you the PDSA overview cycle, okay? And the interesting thing about PDSAs is PDSAs usually are smaller little bites of information. You develop a change, you try it out, you implement it, and then you implement it more broadly. So you can see what do we need to change? What is the test so we know what the weaknesses are? How are we going to include this in our regular operations? And then if it works, we're going to apply it broadly. This is a PDSA cycle. And you can see PDSA, each one of these is each step is a different thing. The confidence to change as you go along gets higher and higher. It's working, so we're going to keep going with it. TIPS uses that continuous process improvement cycle, the one we shared with you that we asked our teachers to do in the classroom, and then we asked the teams to do at the very beginning. They use that TQM model, that continuous process improvement, quality improvement model. Team implemented problem solving. You identify the problem with decision. The data is at the middle here. You identify the problem, you identify the goal that you want to change, you identify the solution, you implement the solution, you then go back and you make sure that the solution is working, and then you make a decision about how to change it, or what to do, continue it, what to do going forward, and then you continue going back around the cycle. So TIPS uses the TQM model. So does PDSA to a point. They just graph it a little bit differently. So I want to do a crosswalk between TIPS and PDSAs so you can see how similar they actually are. PDSA, what I like about PDSA is they like to do small little changes rather than a great leap forward. TIPS tends to do something bigger. PDSAs tends to take small steps. Better to do many small steps in the right direction than to make a great leap forward only to make a mistake. Old Chinese proverb. And so PDSA says you do small things. Make a small change that only affects a few people. The size of your test, it's only a few people. It's a minor change. If you make a major change that affects a lot of people, that's dangerous. What happens if it doesn't work? So what PDSA is, try it out in a small way, make sure it works before you start applying it larger. Okay? So that's what they're suggesting that your PDSA suggests that your teams do. TIPS tends to take things, do a deeper analysis at the beginning and make bigger changes. So it depends on what you need in your school, which one of these that you use. You might have occasions where you use a PDSA approach, another occasion where we got to make a big change in our school and a TIPS approach is more important. But here's what I want you to see. This is the critical piece. Okay, everybody with me? This is the TIPS form. Now you remember the very slide at the beginning where I said you want to show something graphically. I said in your meetings, have a projector, put it on the wall. I would actually have this form on the wall. So in addition to looking at the data, we can progress the meeting as we go along. So for example, today's meeting, type in the date, the location, who the facilitator is, who the minute taker is, who the data analyst is in today's meeting. What about the next meeting? Who is present? Today's agenda items. I'm just going down this form. Now we're getting to the important part. I want everybody to see this. Information for the team about an issue that we're going to address. Okay? And look at the column. You got who's going to address it, when is it going to be addressed by? The problem-solving action plan, if you look down below, precision statement, looking at the data, who, what, where, when, and why. Then our solution, what are we going to do to prevent it? What are we going to do to teach, to correct it? What are we going to do as an acknowledgement or reward? What is the consequence? And who is going to do it? When is it going to be done by? Okay, what's our timeline? And then we're going to go back for updates and say, was it successful or was it not? So this is a TIPS form that you actually use in the meeting. This will be right up there the whole time where you talk about these are the things that we did, and we follow that same process we talked about, going from primary to precise, and then looking at the solution actions, the exact things that we talked about on those previous ones. So this is a TIPS form that you can use. There's a copy of this form, a bigger copy with directions that you can use. It's in your Padlet. Now, let's look at the PDSA, the Plan, Do, Study, Act worksheet. Okay, same thing. Who's in the meeting? When's the meeting? What is this idea what are we going to try to do on our Plan, Do, Study, Act cycle? But if you look down underneath, guess what we have? What's going to be done? Who's going to do it? When is it going to be responsible? Who's going to be responsible for doing it? Was it successful on the act part? Are we going to keep doing it? Are we going to change it? Are we going to abandon it? This is the same thing. If you like the PDSA approach, put this up on the wall, and as you're talking about it, fill the form out that everybody can see you filling the form out in the session. You can see the similarities between these two worksheets. And again, this worksheet and information about it is in the Padlet, so you can get it. I suggest you use the appropriate one depending on what you're doing. If you want to do a small test, use PDSA. If you're doing something more major in your school, changing something that you need to be doing, I suggest you using the TIPS approach. But use whatever's comfortable. You may go with a hybrid of the two. That's fine in your team meetings. That's okay. But make sure you include what's going to be done, who's going to do it, when's it going to be done by, and how do we know if it was successful or not? What's our progress monitoring when you come up with a solution? Everybody with me here? This is the guts of it right here. This is the key part. Okay. Now, looking at PDSAs and TIPS, they both include an activity or an intervention to be implemented. They both include very specific actions to be taken. Who's going to do it? And what are they going to do? We're very specifically written down. What is the data that we're looking at to make sure it was successful? Part of that progress monitoring is what are we going to look at? What's the data we're going to see? Are we trying to reduce office referrals? We're trying to get, what are we trying to increase a reading score? What is it that we're looking to change? Very specifically. Then we decide whether we were successful. We modify the implementation. But again, by putting it up on the screen, the visual context, and I started out with this, with the data, with the precise to primary, all of those things, the visual context allows all team members to follow and contribute. Because I sit in a lot of meetings where two team members are doing all the work and everybody else just sitting around checking their phones. So we want to make sure that the team members are engaged in the process. Some other similarities and differences here. TIPS action plans tend to be longer. PDSAs are very small, can be completed in a week. TIPS has a formal data process. PDSAs are like stacking blocks on each other. It gets bigger change when you do it several times. TIPS process can build, but it can also stand alone. They have the method, they both have a method to show that the desired improvement occurred, and they are generic problem-solving process that can be used when discussing both academic and behavioral issues across multiple tiers. It can be done universally, can be done for tier 2, and darn it, when you're dealing with one child, you do the same thing. This is the same process that's used with applied behavioral analysis. In fact, and I said this last time, when you think about this process we're going to, it's like we're applying applied behavioral analysis to the entire school. That's really what we're doing here. Okay, how about that deal? And I was fast on this one. How about that? And it was the most important part. I took too long on the first one. So we're going to give you another break. And when you come back, my good friend Taylor Davis is going to talk to you for about 20 minutes or so about AI. I'm also going to, I think before we, since we're a little bit early, I'm going to give everybody a chance to talk a little bit at the beginning before the AI session about the primary and precise and the things that I just went over. So take your 10 minutes. Please be back here at 10:50, if you would, 10:50, and we're going to try to get you out of here, and go from there. Shanice?
That sounds good, Dr. Bob. Again, participants, if you do have any questions during your break, you can place them in the chat or you can use the Q&A function. If you need me to drop the link to the Padlet again into the chat, drop me a message and let me know, and I'll be happy to place it in there for you. We'll see you back at 10:50.
No, that make sure not 10:15. We're going to be back at 10:50. Yeah, 10:50. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Maybe that's what they
I
said.
said 10:50.
I didn't hear it right. My ears. Okay, 10:50. Thanks.
Hey, Bob. Before folks come back from break, do you want to just drive the slides for me while I kind of work through?
You want to look through them? Yeah.
Oh, no, I just meant, do you feel comfortable, like, if I?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
That'd be easy. Just say next slide. Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah. I'm gonna spend a minute or two. What happened is, and also so you know, when we do this, which is 2 hours for Courtney's group, I spent a lot of time, with the beginning of this one, referring back to my previous session with them on classroom management.
Mhm.
I'll just blow through that. I won't spend nearly the time on that. I'll spend more time on the second section. Um, anyway, I don't know if you heard any of that or not. A
Oh, yeah,
lot
I've
of it,
been here the whole time.
yeah, a lot of that would be, I wish I'd kind of gone over this with you early on in the AI stuff because it may have been helpful in your thinking. Particularly I could have done that with um, the programmers. Having
Bob,
that
there's
kind of
still
thought
plenty of
process.
time. Still plenty of time. We are still building the brain.
But
So we
but
can
that's
always add more
that
information.
that's sort of the human process, and so it's kind of interesting, particularly making sure we have all those precision all those statements to make it precise, and
Mhm.
then also making sure we cover all the different things in the intervention, the 5 things. But yeah. So anyway, Shanice, we're actually going to do this presentation a second time for a group of counselors, not counselors, LPCs, um, in a couple of weeks, and it'll be adjusted a little bit, but we're getting a bang for our buck with this presentation. So,
Is that the April 11th that you invited us to?
oh
Is that
yeah,
it?
that's the one
Yeah.
I actually, Taylor, I thought that it might be worthwhile, and it was before I realized we were going to do the same thing. I don't know, Shanice, since you've heard this, whether it's necessary for you to come. I in fact actually invited you to come to that one before we defined this one. And I ended up doing the same thing. So
That's
um,
okay.
you're welcome to sit in on that, but I don't
Okay.
know at this point whether it'll be worthwhile.
Well, it'd be
Uh,
different because I'm monitoring other things in the background.
yeah, yeah.
So it'd be different being an attendee. So
Well, and
maybe
and it'll be
so.
a little shorter, and I won't spend so much time on the classroom management stuff. It'll be more on the. I'll spend more time on the problem solving piece.
Okay. All
So
right.
anyway,
I also wanted to ask Taylor, if you see, I think it should be at the top of your screen. Do you see take control?
Hmm, I do see take control.
well, there
You
you
can
go.
actually request to take control, and Dr. Bob can give you control, and you can
Okay.
drive yourself.
So
So
I would
I
just,
am going, Bob, I'm going to let you actually click. The only reason is sometimes for my just prep, because I have so many screens, I usually kind of test what's going to pop up. And I feel like if folks saw how many tabs I have open on my browser right now, they would immediately exit stage left and be like, holy moly, that is overwhelming. So, but thank you so much for giving me the heads up. But I trust Bob to click through. It's like 9 slides. So I
Okay.
think with our like collaborative teaming, the three of us will be good with it.
Absolutely. Okay. All righty.
and I'm going to spend just a minute or two doing a quick review, and then turn it over to Taylor. So I'll have a minute or two before I turn it over. I would imagine Taylor will probably take 30 minutes to a half hour, and then we do our Q&A. So I imagine we'll be done by 11:30, as I thought, or quarter to 12, which is really plenty of time.
Oh, that's great. That is
Yeah,
great.
yeah.
Okay. All
So
righty.
I am gonna do a bit of review when we come back, and then Taylor will take over, and
Sounds
I'll
good.
click it.
Okay. And what's Tony's last name? I think it's, wrote it down.
Taylor Davis.
No. One of our participants.
Oh, okay.
Oh, Tony Galucci. Put in the chat that he came to South Carolina from Los Angeles
Hmm.
um, in November to try to help with Berkeley County's MTSS and their restorative practices programming. He says that he's very thankful to hear that he's in alignment with what you're saying today. So he's
Very
very
good.
grateful for this session, and we're grateful that he's here.
Very good. Well,
And
if you would tell him, I'm in Berkeley County, and I'm available. I know their superintendent very well. I was his mentor when he was first-time principal in Charleston County, and tell him that I would be happy to talk to him anytime.
Okay, and
All
hopefully
right.
he's back online as people should be rejoining so we can
Okay.
start at 10:15.
Yep, because I'm right here in Berkeley County, so happy to talk to you.
I'm sitting right here. I heard you, sir, and
Okay,
yeah, I'd love to pick your brain some more.
sure. Live in Goose Creek, so uh, and I spend a lot of time actually at some of the middle schools. My grandkids go to the middle school, so one goes to Westview and the other goes to is in the School of the Arts over at Merrington.
I've had trying to visit all 47 schools before the end of the year, and I've got to about 20 or so.
All right. Well, welcome to Berkeley County, the fastest growing county in the state, as you probably have realized. It's just absolutely booming here.
Yeah, sure is.
All right. Let's see. Oh, we're actually at time. Okay. Um, I just want to spend a minute, and I'm actually going to back up my slides, so don't stare at your screen and get a headache as I do this. Trying to back up. Maybe it won't let me back up. Okay, there we go. I want to remind everybody about this slide, which I also included in the Padlet as a separate sheet, this team problem solving mantra. And I think if you follow this with your teams, it would be very useful. And again, I haven't gone into deep dive on things like SMART goals. You all are familiar with those kinds of things. But if you take those kinds of lessons you've learned before, along with this problem solving mantra, I think your teams will be in good shape. The other one that I like, and again, I apologize for going back, but I really like this because in two very simple columns, it tells you what you need to do with the data to define the problem to get a precise statement. And then it also reminds you what are the different things you need to do to come up with a solution. And so this slide and the other slide with the mantra, to my mind, are the best summary statements to share with your team and just talk through your team. Are we doing all these things? If you do that, you have condensed this whole 3-hour session into a couple of quick slides that are useful to the people that are on the team. The other thing that I would say is this idea of showing these things graphically as the team is meeting, having it up on a wall can be very powerful. And then also the people knowing their roles and using the roles. And that way you avoid these meetings that don't ever accomplish anything. So I just wanted to say these things as a reminder. These are the keys to successful problem solving for academic and behavioral issues within the school. So when the State Department pushes us towards some of the academic kinds of things, this process works for them. It works for the academic problems, just like it works for the behavioral problems. The other thing is it works at every level. This is the same process, albeit simpler, that we tried to introduce to you last time as the thinking that the teacher needed to go through to solve the problems in the classroom before they ever got referred to a problem-solving team. This same process can be used in grade level teams. It can be used in SIT teams. It can be used in MTSS teams, and it can be used at the district level at district teams. So this is so applicable that if we all do this and then we all get used to this kind of approach, it makes our schools and our districts work so much more efficiently. The other thing I would say is please remember that very first exercise that I mentioned, working smarter, and really have your districts and your schools look at the teams they have and do they make sense and who's on them and who are they serving? Because what you're going to find is that you can combine some teams or maybe eliminate some teams and you may have to add a team. But the point here is we don't add something just to add it. You know, I've heard everybody talk about we can't do one more thing. Well, that's why you do the working smarter. document. Let's get rid of the things that aren't effective and do away with them. So then we have time to do the things that are effective. Okay. All right. So that was my little review of everything. And what I would like to do now is to give you all just a second. Does anybody have any questions about, before we go into the AI component here, anybody have any questions about anything I've said? We'll take a minute, answer those questions, and then we're going to jump forward. Go ahead. Any questions?
Waiting to see if anyone comes off mute or if they place anything in the chat.
Okay.
So far, I don't see any questions, and I don't see any raised hands.
All right. Well, I'm just such an excellent professor here that I've answered all the questions. Kidding. Think about it while Taylor talks, and then we'll give you the opportunity at the end to go ahead and ask additional questions. Hopefully what went over is useful. And now I'm going to talk about AI for a second, and we're going to help to guide school data team decision making. AI is going to help us with that in the future of AI and school team decision making. It's more than ChatGPT. In the future, AI will help educators to efficiently and effectively make the best decisions. And this is where it'll really help make effective interventions for all students. Now, we know the other thing is we have a lot of turnover on our teams. And so having, Taylor, I know we'll talk about this, but having help as our teams may have people turnover is to be very useful. So having said that, it is my great pleasure to introduce Taylor Davis. Again, I've worked with her. She is the most fantastic person I've worked with in the last decade of my life. And I'm really happy to introduce her to you. And she's going to take the next part of this. Taylor, all yours.
Bob, you can't make me like tear up before we started training. But good morning again, everyone. Again, I really do appreciate Dr. Stevens tagging me in to support this conversation and to be able to share space with you guys on this lovely Friday. As Bob said, for those of you that hopped on a little bit later, my name is Taylor Davis. And what we're going to be focusing on today is exploring how AI is shaping both like our current context in education as well as the future of education. So AI can be a game changer here, but only if it's used thoughtfully and ethically, which we'll talk about. It is not just a support for automation. As Bob said, it's about creating smarter, more responsive systems that allow us to support students more effectively and, importantly, reduce the administrative burden on the adults that are trying to both provide the services and coordinate those services. So we'll focus today on practical applications of AI, so kind of that high level where are we at, and then how they can enhance decision making, streamline workflows, and ultimately improve student outcomes. So we'll end with really what's on the horizon, and I'm super excited to share that with you guys. But before we move forward, I'm hoping that you guys can maybe pop into the chat. Are you using AI in your personal life? Are you using AI already in your professional life? I saw a couple folks using the Note Builder AI in the chat, which is really cool. So if you guys could maybe just tell me, what is your relationship with AI? And I'll give you just a moment. And I'm monitoring the chat over here, but I will absolutely need you guys' support because too many screens. So what is your relationship with AI? How are you using AI? Maybe you're using Canva and that magic AI editor. Oh, I love that, Dr. Lane White. We are best friends. Fabulous. We love a good friendship. I am also best friends with AI, as you guys can probably imagine. Embedded in several of our academic programs. Awesome. So yeah, we're seeing that AI started to be incorporated as kind of a feature or an asset in a lot of the platforms that we're using. All right. Well, I am going to make a gentle assumption that we have, and I use it in all aspects of my life, fabulous. So we probably have a wide spectrum of experience with AI. Some of us that are using it and are best friends on a day-to-day basis, some of us that are curious about it, maybe some of us that are apprehensive about it. All of that is okay. So no matter where you're at, I'm just going to kind of give you in our next slide a little bit of like AI 101 so that we can, as we always do in academia, translate all of those acronyms and get kind of a shared language together. So Bob, if you would go ahead and transition that slide forward. Ooh, Cameron, I like that. I use it to clean up mistakes in emails or rephrase objectives in a different way. Fabulous. Love /8. LOL. Absolutely. Okay, so let's go through our intro to artificial intelligence. And I'm going to stay on this slide for a minute, so you guys be patient with me. So what is AI? As you can see on the slide, simply put, it's referring to computer systems that analyze data, recognize patterns, make predictions, respond to questions. That's definitely where I use a lot of AI, is, kind of almost collaborating with it and then assisting with decision making. There's also other really cool, innovative uses for AI that involve like body technology and stuff like that, but that's far outside the scope of what we're talking about today. But all of those things, decision making and kind of thinking through, making predictions, we associate with human intelligence. So AI is already shaping, as you all know, and I've already indicated in the chat, the way that we teach, the way that we learn, the way that we're making decisions, certainly the behavior of our students. So how exactly is this applying to education and school behavioral health? That is one of my
Participants, is Taylor frozen for you all as well?
Yes.
Let me see if I can reach her.
There you go. Maybe she should turn off her video. Might help.
Taylor, if you can hear us, if you can disable your video, that may help your bandwidth. Dr. Bob, I don't still have her phone number. Can you call her in the background? And while we are waiting for Taylor to rejoin us, I did have a question. Since several of you are using AI, maybe as a function of some of your platforms, do your districts have specific policies regarding the use of AI in your schools? You can place that in chat, or
I'll
you
let
can
them know.
unmute
Thanks.
yourselves.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, there was a power surge at the University of South Carolina that knocked everything offline. It is coming back online. So if we could just give Taylor a minute or two, she says things are rebooting. So I don't know what happened, but there was, somebody hit a telephone pole somewhere or something happened. So she'll be back on in just a minute. Everything is rebooting at the university. So we give her a second. She'll be right back with us. Is that okay, Shanice?
Absolutely. I was asking our participants if their individual districts have policies around the use of
Oh,
AI.
very good. I was talking to Taylor on the phone. That's a great discussion. Yeah, let's discuss that while she comes back up.
Let's see, Elizabeth says we have had to address students' use of AI in our academic integrity portions of our high school handbooks. Yeah, I've seen that as well.
Any discussion on that's a wonderful question, Shanice. Any discussion about using AI in other than the students in terms of the adults using it for any policy or procedural or writing kinds of things? Oh. All right. Well, she just texted me again and everything's coming back up. So if we just bear with for another moment or two, she should be on before too long.
Okay. And in reference to that last question, Elizabeth followed up by saying, our adults use AI, but the district does not have a policy about using AI one way or the other.
Yeah.
And then Cameron Gates, I have friends who use AI for personal counseling, basically, but it concerns me.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, I again teach the occasional class, and I know many of the people on the call may be adjunct professors or occasionally teach classes. Um, and while it's a concern for K-12, it's really a concern for uh, post 12, college, undergraduate, and both graduate students. I have unfortunately caught one person that had used AI to significantly do a paper, um, and certainly understand that, but again, it's a thing to wrestle with because in fact, my feeling on it is if you can use AI intelligently to help create something worthwhile, that's fine. Um, I think transparency is one of the things that this is a sort of a philosophical question. I think if you do that, you just have to be transparent about it. And it's like anything else. It's like whoop, Taylor's calling me just a moment. Hello, Taylor. How's it going? Not well. Okay. Well, I may
We
go
may need to
forward.
mute.
Okay.
Go ahead and
Uh,
mute, Dr. Stevens.
yeah. Um,
Hey, Tony, can you share with us about the program you're trying to bring into your district that sorts attendance data from PowerSchool using AI?
Sure. It's a program called Everyday Labs, and it listens to PowerSchool, but it doesn't talk back, so you don't have to worry about it changing anything. And it helps you sort, see norms, break down things. If you have a collection of kids who are never there on Fridays because of baseball tournaments, you can create that group. These are my baseball boys that are always missing during this season. What can I do to keep their seat time and it'll still allow them to play baseball and those kind of things. Um, and so we're at the infancy of bringing it on, but hopefully it will be
Okay.
a very effective tool.
Okay. Could you email me some information about that? I want to share that with our team.
I certainly can.
I see it.
yeah.
Yeah, that's correct. We're using it, Miss, for the McKinney-Vento students as well. That's where we're starting it.
Okay, Elizabeth, I
All
see your
right.
comment as well. Thank you for that.
Good, very good comments. It appears that there's some kind of power failure over at the campus. So Taylor's probably not going to be able to get back with us. I'm gonna go through the slides quickly. I've been involved in this process, so I can talk to it a little bit. But then Taylor is going to do a recording of it, and she will send it to Shanice, and we'll distribute her version of it, so you can follow up on it later. One of the obviously what we have on this slide is definition of AI, and it's refers to computer systems that can perform tasks typically requiring human intelligence. And many of us are familiar with machine learning and natural language processing. Natural language processing is going in and looking at written words and pulling out words that have meaning so you can see what we're going about. The new AI agents, the things that are going to make a big difference is this idea of co-pilots and assistants. Because when we're in a team situation, what happens is the computer is like a team member sitting there with everyone else and will then ask a question and say, do you have this data? Or what might be a good way to go? Or this might be something that we want to consider. And this AI agent, this assistant, actually acts as a team member. The beauty of it is they never forget, they learn, and then they're able to say, we had similar kinds of data presented last year. This was the solution, the intervention that we came up with. Perhaps we should consider that in this case. And so it allows us to, the AI allows us to pull this information together much more quickly, and also remembering that part of reliability and progress monitoring allow us to go back and see what things we did in the past, what worked and what hasn't. It's very helpful with the progress monitoring component. I'm going to go ahead and go forward and talk a little bit about some of the misconceptions of AI. And will it replace humans? No, it enhances our roles. It's too complicated. And in fact, they're becoming more and more user-friendly. The discussion you've just had about people here using the tools, we're using them all the time. The concern that it will create dependence, not a replacement. It just is another person sitting at the table, as I said. This next one is important. This concern about privacy and security is really a big issue, and this is something we have to wrestle with. And we have to have strong policies about the ethical use of AI and make sure the data gets protected. So while these AI tools are useful, we have to make sure that our data isn't getting out into broader kinds of place. And so we really have to watch this component of it, the security component of it. And this is a concern that many of our districts have, at the district level, have with AI assistance.
Hey, Bob.
Yes.
Crisis moderately averted.
Oh, you're back. All right.
I am so very sorry, everyone. Literally, we just had a massive power surge on campus, and it took out everything around. So I'm hoping that it'll stick on, and I'm grateful, Bob, that you kind of continued moving forward. But is it okay if I kind of start back into the presentation and see where we go from here?
Absolutely. All yours. Turn it over to you.
Thank you. And again, y'all, I'm so sorry. The noise was also very startling. So forgive if I'm a little bit like verklempt right now. Okay, so it looks like we are at AI is always right. So as we know, AI is not always right? AI is only as good as the data that's informing it. So ChatGPT is phenomenal, but what we know about GPT is that it's open access, right? We're accessing the entire internet. It's not secure. So we're going to get a lot of valid and reliable content, but we may also get kind of those pieces of the puzzle that are less reliable or problematic. So AI is providing those insights, but not absolute answers. We'll talk more about how important human oversight is here in a bit. And also kind of that importance of developing a more secure and nuanced algorithm, which we'll talk about in reference to one of our last items in the presentation. So AI is just ChatGPT. As many of us know, AI is certainly not just ChatGPT. It is so much more robust, and we'll talk a little bit more about how robust that is, especially in education. But AI is influencing how we're screening, how we're assessing, how we're looking at data, how we're looking at our systems, how we're engaging with students in the classroom. And also how we are communicating, right? Some of you guys said earlier, hey, I'm using AI to help me streamline my emails and my communication. So it certainly goes a bit further than just ChatGPT. But like we chatted about earlier, GPT is certainly a best friend, and custom GPTs are very cool if you want to turn your attention towards something to kind of learn a little bit more about. So the key takeaway from this particular slide is that AI is a tool. It is not a teacher. It is not an administrator. It is not the decision maker. Its role is to assist, not replace. any of our human decision making. And we should always be looking at those responses with a discerning eye, reflecting on our own areas of expertise and pulling in other folks when necessary to kind of make sure, hey, is the data that we're seeing accurate? Is this response accurate? So we can go ahead and move forward, Bob. So as many of you know from the content that y'all popped into the chat, AI is already being used across multiple areas in education. So in the next couple slides, what I'm going to do is just look at the technology that is already in use and consider its role at the building level, classroom level, and district level, which you guys probably are experts in yourselves, right? So if this is a bit of a like reminder or kind of like a heads up, hey, we're aware of this too, just walk with me on it, right? So when we're looking at how AI is serving us, on the left side of the slide, you're going to see kind of like what is AI looking like in our classrooms, and then some of those elements are also like going over into our offices. And then on the right side of your slide, you're going to see really how is AI impacting the systems at either a district level or a building leadership level. So with lesson planning and content creation, we know that the tools that we have listed here help educators create really engaging learning materials. And it also helps us to create really engaging content when we do outreach and awareness. I know many of us are very familiar with Canva and the AI features there. The Adobe Firefly is allowing us to edit pictures and images in really cool and creative ways. And then of course, DALL-E does the same thing as well. Assessment and feedback, you've got AI-powered grading tools like Gradescope, so helping to make grading a bit more efficient and getting feedback to our students more efficiently. Student engagement and personalized learning, this is certainly a very big space for AI. So the AI platforms like the ones that are listed here help tailor learning to individual student needs. Then we go on to data analysis and administrative tools. So that's when we're looking at large school-wide information systems like our PowerSchools that are starting to integrate AI into those systems and help us to track progress of our students, whether it's academic or behavioral, really effectively. Screening and progress monitoring, as well as data collection. This is probably the set of resources that is most familiar to the folks that are on our webinar today. And this is really what's helping us to identify and respond to student needs. And then a very cool area, which is AI for behavioral mental health support. Obviously, that's very close to my heart. So the tools listed here, help us monitor student well-being, promote resiliency, give them something in their pocket and on their laptops and on their tablets that can reinforce that skill development, those coping skills that we're teaching in the classroom, and really enhance student and also full system resiliency. So these platforms and products really serve in their respective areas though, right? Like they stay in a very specific lane. They have specific functions and outputs, largely around deliverables that we need for our team meetings. So like data, a specific feature of the MTSS system, like how are we going to be supporting students at Tier 3 for resiliency, or kind of supporting those identified benchmarks. You'll notice at the bottom of your screen that I've got a little bit of content there that says School Behavioral Health MTSS ? Right? So what we know is that there's a bit of a gap here, and at the end of our presentation, I want to share with you guys some of the what's up and coming in terms of really large high-level systemic support. Putting it all together, we know AI is not this like futuristic future concept. It's already here, it's sticking around. So ideally, we all work together to make these technologies work for us in a meaningful and ethical way. Let's go ahead and advance that slide, Bob. So we're going to connect AI directly to MTSS, and we're going to look at this from kind of that 30,000 foot view, right? So AI does strengthen, existing AI strengthens those core MTSS functions. So AI is supporting tiered support development, teaming, screening, progress monitoring, data-informed decision-making in different areas and avenues. But if we're looking at these specific kind of pieces of how is AI supporting all of that MTSS infrastructure, it's in these core domains. So decision making and early intervention. What is it doing there? It's assisting with trend analysis, providing us those predictive insights, right? So when, Bob very graciously took over at the second slide, there was the machine learning, deep learning, and then predictive analysis. We're really looking at those predictive analytics a great deal when it comes to how AI is integrated currently into our settings. Then we move to efficiency and documentation. Here we're looking at how AI supports automation of functions that reduce kind of the burden, the task burden, because we know if we've got one thing to do, there's 14 things that we have to do before that, which means that AI is stepping in to really reduce the cognitive load there, help us out with that decision-making fatigue that so many of us feel, that functional freeze that we can really get into when those to-do lists start becoming exceptionally long, and then ultimately helping us to reduce burnout by taking some of those things off of our plate. And then finally, we'll combine kind of the collaboration and coordination here. So with collaboration, we look at how AI tools are supporting outreach and awareness, communication, increasing our capacity in coordinating with community-based resources and families, and really thinking about that wraparound care, making sure that everybody's at the table and streamlining some of those processes. So, essentially what this boils down to is that when we are integrating AI and considering it through the lens of MTSS and certainly SBH MTSS, we're going to spend less time on paperwork. We're going to spend less time in meetings because our meetings are going to be more efficient. And we're going to be able to spend more time on what we really want to do, which is that direct one-on-one human support, whether that's of students or with our colleagues or with faculty, and really get back to the relationship, which we know is such a positive indicator for change. We can move forward. So in our next slide, what we're looking at here is breaking down how AI is supporting everything across the cascade in Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3. So again, these are some of the programs and platforms that I had listed before. They're integrated into these particular subset areas of our cascade. So what we're looking at Tier 1, these are tools that are going to be supporting identifying school-wide trends, translating and helping us aggregate SEL data, enhancing our early warning systems for behavioral challenges. At Tier 2, we know that AI is supporting the provision of personalized SEL and mental health interventions for small groups, making Tier 2 supports kind of more proactive, because as we all know, we often avoid Tier 1 and Tier 2 and skip right to Tier 3. So AI can help us to kind of subvert some of those historic challenges that we've had with overburdening or overwhelming our Tier 3 supports. And at Tier 3, we know that AI enhances progress tracking. It can be used as a resource in crisis prevention, wraparound service coordination for high need students. And there are some really, really cool and innovative tools right now in that Tier 3 space that are student facing as well as clinician facing. So when we're thinking about that intensive support, off the top of my head, thinking about resources like Alongside is really cool, Sharpen is really cool. And these are resiliency support resources that can be embedded at Tier 3, but that's a particular space that's got a lot of momentum behind it. But let's reflect on everything that we've talked about today, what Bob has shared with all of us, the problem solving, the decision making. So let's move forward and kind of see, what is AI's role with TIPS and PDSA? What could we be doing to streamline the work that we're doing in TIPS, and then think about the PDSA efforts that we're already kind of moving towards making more a part of our day-to-day teaming. So we know that AI has an incredible capacity to support all of the work, right? So on here, we've got a bit of a case scenario. I wanted to provide us a framing because I know that so much of what we talk about in AI, and Bob and I definitely come up against this wall, it can feel very abstract, which makes it uncomfortable. And AI can do so much that it's hard to kind of put the lines of demarcation and understanding. So having something to frame it in, I think, is really helpful. So here today, we have a school that has identified that they are seeing an increase in behavioral referrals during 6th grade lunch. So how can AI resources streamline the practices we've discussed? AI can scan discipline data from PowerSchool and pinpoint the highest risk time and location. AI can suggest potential practices such as the structured seating, increased supervision, which then supports the team's intervention planning. And I want y'all to be very mindful of the language that I use there. AI can suggest evidence-based practices or strategies, and then the team sits down and makes that penultimate decision about how is this going to be effective at our school, within our district, et cetera, et cetera. Do we think that this is the best course of action for what we're seeing, right? And then AI tracks referral rates post-intervention, can flag if adjustments are needed. So again, that's that PDSA portion of it. For the team, and I was thinking about this while Bob was talking, and I probably should have popped this on as like a little sub pop-up on the slide, but you think about that minute taker role in those meetings. Wouldn't it be nice to have something that can act as a minute taker, and it can be organized around the way in which you guys want to be taking minutes to best suit what outputs you need? Thinking about AI as the support for that individual who is facilitating that data analyst position, right? Reducing kind of the burden on them, getting those systems and processes automated so that everyone can be really engaged and really focused in those meetings, and not kind of worrying about how are we going to set up for the meeting and how are we going to kind of facilitate all these pieces. And again, as Bob said, it will help us to not just admire data, but also do something really meaningful for it and expedite those processes. Next, we're going to move on to best practices and key considerations. So what we've done so far is we've defined what AI is. We've got a bit of a common language here, right? We understand AI agents really are what we kind of professionally and personally engage with a great deal: chatbots, co-pilots, and assistants. We've got language around what are these things like natural language processing models and large language models, and then we've got a clear definition. Then we moved into what is AI really doing in terms of influencing our practices and our programs now. And then now we're going to shift to, okay, if we're thinking about integrating AI on a larger scale, we're going to build in a new platform, or I'm an educator and I really want to make sure that I'm engaging in best practice when I'm using AI in my classroom or AI to support lesson planning. What are the things I should consider? And also, how do I use AI really effectively? Because it definitely is a skill. So with best practices and key consideration, we know that AI should always be implemented responsibly, right? Best practices and key elements to consider include the ethical and responsible use, the absolute necessity of human oversight, like we discussed before. Let's see here, ensuring that we are selecting tools and platforms that enhance the functioning of existing resources, programs, practices, and personnel, right? So we don't want this to be kind of that theme that we have of like, okay, this is another thing. Like, how is this going to make us do what we're doing already better, more efficiently, and more sustainably? And then we want to invest in the efforts that support effective use of AI, right? So that's going to be making sure that we're doing really effective training on things like how to write prompts or queries effectively. And then, of course, we want to make sure that we are focusing on alignment and all of those other pieces that ensure that we're not duplicating, that we're enhancing, and that it becomes kind of a part of the culture and that everyone has a shared language around it. But the two areas that I really want to focus on and just expand a bit more on are the top two on your slide. So the ethical and responsible use, and then writing clear and effective prompts. Again, because I know with the prompts, we all are using ChatGPT on a regular basis, and we want to make sure that we're using it really effectively. And then, of course, priority one, are we being ethical? Are we making sure that we're responsible? So we've got our first bullet here, establish clear district policies. So those policies on AI use are going to focus on transparency, bias mitigation, data privacy and security. And when I was on the phone with Bob and y'all were kind of going through your questions while I was in limbo, one of the compassionate curiosities was about, well, how do we write these policies? Is there any guidance? And we're starting to develop more guidance on those higher level policies. But as Bob shared, we already have a lot of stuff on students, but not necessarily as much on higher level. However, those resources do exist and are certainly available. Now moving on to our next bullet, ensure AI tools comply with FERPA, HIPAA, any other data protection laws, right? So if we're getting anything that's going to be accessing student data, and I know I'm preaching to a choir, we have to make sure that it's in alignment and that it specifically articulates that it is safe for use in schools with student data. Our third bullet here, use AI to support equity. So we want to avoid reinforcing existing biases that can exist in educational outcomes, make sure that we are really working through our use of AI with a discerning eye and with compassionate kind of awareness of what some of the slips, trips, and falls could be. We definitely want to provide training to staff and students too, right, on AI use and limitations and expectations so that we are very clear, because clear is kind. Regularly evaluate AI tools for fairness, accuracy, alignment, educational values, or that they're in alignment with educational values. If you are going to be doing any large-scale data analysis, you want to make sure that you anonymize student data. That goes without saying. We're going to train our staff on how data is used. And finally, we want to make sure that we are ensuring transparency with families and caregivers about how we're using AI in relation to their child's or their children's data. So now we're going to pivot over to writing prompts. So here I've got the buzzwords, right? Be specific, use context, avoid vague and overly broad requests, experiment and refine, and then, as you'll see on a number of these, train staff, right? So what does specific mean? You want to clearly define the task or question to get useful AI generated responses, right? The more specificity you provide, the better. And then that leads us into context. So you're going to provide background information to improve accuracy and relevance. One really big thing is including your role, right? Like, so what role do you play in asking this question? So for me, I'm new to a school. I'm contracting as a clinician. I'm not really familiar with the language of MTSS, and I really want to make sure that I'm building relationships so that I can be a part of this school culture. I might say something like, I'm a licensed mental health professional. I'm going to be supporting Tier 3 services in a rural school district, and I would love for you to explain my role in the SBH MTSS infrastructure, and then see what happens, right? And then the last thing in terms of context is asking your chatbot or your co-pilot, is there any additional information that you need from me in order to complete this task or make this happen, right? So if you take nothing else from today when it comes to writing prompts, first thing is put your role in. Second thing is ask the chatbot if there's any additional information that it needs. Then we move down to avoiding vague or overly broad requests to minimize irrelevant or misleading outputs. You're going to want to adjust your prompts based on the results, right? So we know that sometimes, I think some of us have learned this from students using AI and then turning in assignments. AI has a very specific voice. It can be repetitive. It can be inaccurate. So we want to make sure that if we give it a prompt and then kind of what it's delivering to us is funky or not quite what we expected or seems a little bit askew, then we'll go back and refine that prompt. And that's going to help to also train the AI on what it is that you're requesting and who you are, kind of how you communicate. And then, of course, finally, you want to train staff on best practices when it comes to prompting AI, making sure that it's efficient and helping them to understand how it can maybe benefit them in their day-to-day lives, in their professional roles, and making them more efficient and effective. So really here, the key takeaway is that AI should enhance our human experience. It should be making our lives a little bit easier. It's not sitting here as a replacement, and it should always be in alignment with district and state education policies. And now we'll move on to our final slide. So, and forgive me, I hope that this is okay to say. When we talk about what is on the horizon, what is up and coming, what is possible when we think about AI, I imagine that sometimes Bob and myself and some of my other colleagues think that folks imagine us like fashioning tinfoil hats when we're alone, because really like the possibilities are endless. And how we're able to use it is really about how we're thinking about it. And as Bob was, I don't know if you guys were around when we were kind of chatting and y'all were on break, we were talking about thinking about our thinking. How can we be really mindful when we're building these platforms, and how do we go back and fill in gaps? So possibilities are endless, but right now, one of the pieces of the puzzle that I am incredibly invested in, and I think is a very viable asset for us, is thinking about AI as a systems level support. So when I'm trying to either install my MTSS infrastructure, enhance my MTSS infrastructure, I'm looking at those core features. I recognize that we're struggling with teaming. What we would typically do in those times is maybe contact an external coach, right? Bring somebody else in to support us and coach and guide on practices, procedures, what's kind of the best route to take here. And what I can tell you guys is something really cool that we're working on is actually building that MTSS, School Behavioral Health MTSS coach, and then nesting it within this really supportive and robust ecosystem. So right now we are in the process of training the algorithm and really building out the brain. Another cool and unique feature of what we're working towards is making sure that you can undoubtedly say this is safe, this is secure, and this is reliable. And a lot of that has to do with the knowledge domains that we're building this AI off of, which is specific to SBH MTSS and the entirety of research that is associated with that. And that gives us kind of, I usually use the term like a safe, like Faraday box, right? So we're not reaching out into things that are unreliable. We're pulling from materials, content, and context that is efficacious and helpful. We also want to make sure that it is accessible, right? So a lot of the platforms that are outside of ChatGPT, which is of course free use, a lot of these larger platforms or resources to be able to embed them in the schools, they're not free use. So we're really hyper focused on ensuring that as we're building this, that it maintains availability in a free capacity to our schools and our districts in South Carolina, and that it's informed by our schools and our districts in South Carolina. So what's on the horizon associated with what we call our MTSS concierge, right? Because it is role specific, it is supportive, it's available 24/7, and it's housed in a very nice hotel of resources, and it's also connected to other humans, is that we really want to have the voices and insight from MTSS teams across the states, our state rather, to explore this beta version, tell us what is really awesome about it, tell us what is not so great about it. So I'm looking forward to hopefully making some nice connections with either folks that are on the call today or other members of our school communities to help us to train and continue to build what I believe will be a really incredible resource. And hopefully when it is finally in its full iteration, I can take off my tinfoil hat. But that's kind of the last educational piece. But what I do want to do is kind of toss the ball back to everyone else. So I'm curious about, what are your thoughts on AI in schools? What's working really well for y'all? What are some of the challenges that you're seeing? What are some of the concerns that you're seeing, whether it's internal to the school or external? I would love to hear from you guys on some of those pieces. And Bob, if there's anything that I missed or that you really want to elevate, please tag in. I know you see the pictures of our existing app, which is where our AI will be built into in the future. Right now, she is still learning. So my compassionate curiosity is, what are your thoughts on AI now? How are we using it? Oh, I think now I've got some folks in here. Okay. We've had to address students' use of AI in our academic integrity portions of our high school handbooks. Our adults use AI, but we don't have a policy that one way or the other. I have friends who use AI for personal counseling, basically. That's an interesting use. So yeah, we want to be mindful when it comes to how we're engaging with AI, that AI is not a human. It can feign empathy, but it's certainly not real empathy. We've seen a lot of growth, especially on ChatGPT, that if there are indicators of crisis, because other folks do talk to GPT in a similar fashion, it will connect you to the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline numbers and crisis numbers, but it's certainly not a meaningful alternative to in-person or virtual counseling.
One of the things, you go ahead. Oh, that's my in the background. I'm hearing myself. One of the things that was interesting is that Taylor mentioned specificity. I spend a lot of time in my section talking about trying to get very specific, going to that precise statement. So we see common things here. That's what AI needs. The other thing that was interesting, another point, and I like to use examples so you can see them, was I talked very briefly about identifying behaviors, not in general, things like disrespect, and how that led to some of the equity issues that Taylor talked about AI can help us with. So if you think about these things, they're all the things that I said, AI can help in all of those things. And it's really interesting when you think about it in those very, very sort of functional terms. This is what we're doing. And those are a couple examples of how AI can help us get that precise hypothesis, a precise statement, how AI can make us avoid making decisions based on generalizations that aren't appropriate given issues within individuals and within society. So those are all ways that this AI can help, directly pointed at what we talked about in the earlier session. So I'll stop there.
But I think like one of the things I just find really encouraging, whether it's about the tools that we're already using in AI with AI, or what is on the way, is AI is allowing us to communicate to these historic barriers that we have had that are consistent challenges with MTSS implementation, whether that's for academics or for behavior or mental health, right? It's communicating to, we don't have enough time, we don't have enough personnel, we don't have enough external resources. Well, here is where we can really leverage technology so that we can point our attention at the problem and at supporting kids and supporting our colleagues versus having to spend so much time, giving it a Google and figuring out what resources are available. It really streamlines those processes. But I'm just fascinated by the opportunity that presents itself to have a additional team member that can provide coaching guidance, light coaching guidance, and then connect you to appropriate resources when they're, when there's a line in the sand. And I'm looking forward to kind of seeing what's up and coming for the next few years. And Lord knows AI moves so very rapidly. So we have to look at everything with a very discerning eye. But I think if there's no additional kind of questions or feedback, that's a bit all that I've got for today. And I'm so grateful that I was able to connect with you guys. Thank you, Dr. Stevens and Ms. Wiley for looping me in. And again, I apologize for the very off-putting and abrupt exit and discombobulation that has happened afterwards. So I hope y'all give me some grace.
Absolutely, grace is extended. I am going to stop the recording now. However, I want to give everyone an opportunity to ask any questions of our presenters and also thank them for taking the time out to be with us today and share a wealth of information. I will also put into the chat the evaluation for today's session And you will also receive an email with this link along with a link to the presentation resources. If there are any questions, please unmute yourselves and ask these experts their opinions and get as much information today as you possibly can. Again, these sessions are intended for our sub-grantees as you are providing programming and activities with your Stronger Connections grants. But please, please, please take this opportunity to gain as much knowledge as you possibly can.
And we hope to see, if waiting on questions, we hope to see you at the conference, those of you that can come. I'm not sure, Shanice, about using Stronger Connections resources to attend the conference. I will tell you in previous years, aware districts did that. I'm not sure whether that's permissible under Stronger Connections. But if we have a number of Stronger Connections folks attend, we may provide an opportunity or a space for you to meet together at the conference and I'll talk with Shanice about that if you would like, and if a number of you are attending. Any questions? I put a lot of things into Padlet, forms and so forth, or I shared enough things with Shanice to put into Padlet, so hopefully those forms are there. Please use them. Taylor and I are both available. The way that we operate, we are here to serve the South Carolina Department of Ed while we don't work for you. We're here to serve you, and you can reach out to either one of us at any time. Any questions there? Anything to see?
There's a question from Tony. Is it appropriate to get your emails? I think their contact information is on their slides. Is that correct?
I'm not sure I actually had it on the slide. I am so sorry. Let's see.
Taylor has placed hers in the chat. Dr.
Okay.
Stevens, you want me to put yours?
Yes, please do, if you would. I am not the technology person that Taylor is, unfortunately.
Is it
Bob sells himself short. He's a good visionary technology person.
Is it Comcast.net or .com?
.net. Thank you. That's my personal. I have several others. That's the one I answer the most, so that's the best one to get me on.
I'm very interested in picking both of your brains, and I've written a lot of MTSS structural and programming for LA Unified, and now hopefully for Berkeley County. And I'm just really excited about the AI component. I think it'll help exhaustion, fidelity, and yes, I'm very excited and interested, and I'll be reaching out to both of you. Thank you for today.
Thanks so much. Look forward to it.
All right. Anything else? Going once? All right. Well, then, Shanice.